On a Monday morning like any other, Kai found out that the world was ending. He didn't think twice about it, really. For longer than Kai could remember, for years before he'd even been born, all of the human race had been visited by the same voice in the same dream. And that voice had said, "One day the sun will rise in the west, and that night, after the sun sets in the east, when all fall asleep, there will be dreams no longer." Since he'd been a child, his parents, teachers, friends had taught him about the meaning of the dream, that the world would end when that day came. Nobody knew how, but it remained a truth of life nonetheless, a morbid maxim passed down the generations. And today, the sun had risen in the west. On his last day on Earth, Kai woke up alone. There was no trace of Joy, his girlfriend. He assumed she'd already left for work. She was working long hours, pining for a promotion. The pursuit of happiness didn't wait for the end of the world. He checked his watch. It was 10 a.m, but Kai didn't panic. He waited for his boss to call him, and in the meantime, made breakfast. As he prepared, he noticed a note that had been left on the table. It was from Joy. "I've left early," it said. "I needed some time alone. This isn't because of you, but the world is ending tomorrow, and I wanted to escape it all." He thought he knew where she had gone. He took down the note, and that was when his phone rang. It was Kai's boss. "Where the hell are you?" he said. "At home," Kai replied. "Like hell you are. Last chance, Kai. Get to the office by 10:30 and I might reconsider firing you." Kai considered this for a moment. He thought it rather generous, really. If anything, he was surprised that he hadn't been fired already. "The world is ending tomorrow," Kai sighed. "So?" his boss replied. "Howard knows that, and he still came on time today." Kai thought about this. "Well, you should hire yourself another Howard then." Then he hung up. He had decided to spend his last day finding Joy. He thought it'd be a damn shame if they never saw each other again. As he left the house, a dog came leaping and bounding from a park across the road. It had been chasing a ball, which fell to Kai's feet. When it saw him, it stopped, its tail wagging, waiting for him to throw it again. Kai smiled. A man, perhaps a little younger than Kai, if not in years, then of disposition, came running after the dog. "Bad boy," the man said. "Don't you know it's your last day on Earth?" The dog just smiled, panting as he looked between Kai and the man. Evidently, he didn't. The man gave Kai a nod. "Shame about that, eh? The world ending and all." "Have you seen a girl walking this way?" Kai asked him. "About yay high, long hair?" The man frowned. "I probably have. Awfully vague description, isn't it?" "Why?" he asked. Kai thought about that for a moment. "I guess I don't really know," he conceded. "Maybe I just wanted to see her one more time before tomorrow." The man shook his head. Well, quite a sad thing it would be if you were deprived of that opportunity. As Kai walked away, he looked back at the man and the dog in the park once more. The man threw the ball, the dog chased after it, and when the dog returned, the man threw the ball again. Over and over. Kai continued to walk to Joy. As he did, he remembered that he would pass a cafe on the way. In that cafe, Kai's childhood friend worked. At least, he thought she did. He hadn't seen her in years. There was no particular reason for this. As with friends of years past, they'd simply drifted apart. But the world was ending tomorrow, so as he passed the cafe, he ducked in. Just for a second. It was nice. Classy. Filled with people going about their lives, catching up with old friends, enjoying the afternoon sun. Businessmen and women passed in and out, faceless suits on calls, buying coffees and bagels to take back to the office. Life as usual. Kai's friend was behind the register, taking an order from a customer. "Hello, Sam," he said. She was pleasantly surprised, which was nice. They exchanged pleasantries, which was also nice, until someone behind him coughed, reminding Kai that he was at the front of a long line. Sam chuckled and leant in. "Last day on Earth, people must be in a rush, hey?" she muttered. They laughed, and then Kai ordered lunch. Halfway through his meal, Sam joined him. "I'm on break," she said. "You haven't changed a bit," Kai replied. Sam laughed. "Neither have you, apparently. Funny, it's been so long. What brings you to this side of town?" "I'm looking for Joy. She's run away," Kai said. "Run away?" Sam asked. He pulled Joy's note from his pocket and handed it to Sam. She read it with a furrowed brow. "The world is ending tomorrow, and I wanted to escape it all." "Escape? Escape from what?" "What's she scared of?" Sam said. "I mean, sure, the world's ending, but it's not like tomorrow would have been any different from today." "Beats me," Kai replied. "But still, I'm looking for her." Sam tapped the table, thinking. "Now you mention it, I think I might have seen her passing this way about an hour ago. She headed towards the mountain." Sam pointed through the window, then frowned. "But why are you looking for her anyway?" Is this how you want to spend your last day on Earth? On a wild goose hunt? Kai thought about this, allowed his mind to settle, then answered, I don't really know what else I would do. Sam laughed. It was a hollow noise. Well, it was nice seeing you again, Kai. Good luck on your search, she said. As Kai left the cafe, he saw Sam serving customers again, apron on and coffee cups in each hand. She would spend her last day serving coffee. The sound of her laugh echoed in the shell of Kai's mind. He pushed this from his mind and continued on the way to Joy. When he had reached the outer bounds of the city, he remembered that his elder brother lived nearby. Tim was 9 years Kai's senior, but they had been inseparable during Kai's childhood. He'd moved out when Kai was only 10, missing those early formative years that had shaped Kai into the man he was now. Kai realized that he hadn't visited in some time, and he felt a pang of regret. Guilt, even. But it was his last day on Earth. A final chance, he thought. He left his route and knocked on Tim's door. When Tim saw his little brother at the doorstep, he smiled gently. Behind him, a boy no older than 5 and no taller than Kai's waist peered out. His eyes shone innocence and beauty and all that was good in the world. Kai's nephew came barreling at him at light speed. Kai smiled and laughed. I think I know why you're here, Tim said. Let's go somewhere we can talk. Kai frowned but followed Tim, his nephew racing ahead. They soon came out into the porch behind Tim's house. His backyard was a work of art, a beautiful garden centered around a great weeping willow. Kai remembered when Tim had first bought the house. It had been a rundown thing, but when Tim saw the willow in the yard, he fell in love. Kai's sister-in-law was tending to some ferns in the shade of the tree. Why don't you check on what your mum is doing? Tim said to his son. Now alone on the porch, Tim faced his brother. Let's keep our voices down, he said, glancing at the slow-moving sun. Your nephew doesn't know east from west yet, and it'd be nice to keep it that way. He looked Kai in the eye, then, Is it Joy? He said. Kai didn't know how Tim knew, but he nodded. She's run pretty far this time, hasn't she? Must have gone to the mountain again. I never see you unless she's gone there, and it's been a while since she last came by. Kai felt another pang of guilt. Was that really true, he thought. His body had grown inexplicably heavier, he realized, and he sunk low in his chair. Tim put a hand on his shoulder. Despite their years apart, his touch reignited a bond that only two brothers could share. It's not so bad, Kai, he said. We lived different lives, and that's okay. Goodbyes are always the hardest part, but at the end of the day, at the end of the world, you'll always be my brother. They sat on the porch in silence then. The sun had only just begun its descent to the east. A gentle breeze came over the yard, tussling the leaves in the willow. Kai looked at his brother, at peace, eyes closed, sunlight warming his face. Kai listened to the sound of his nephew's laughter, watched him leap and crawl through the grass, tugging at leaves, pulling at his mother's arm. It was a terribly beautiful day to end the world. The peace had become unbearable. Are you afraid of tomorrow? Kai asked his brother. After some delay, Tim replied, his eyes still closed. No, it would have been the same as any other day. Why not enjoy today for what it is? I think I should go, Kai said. At the door, the two brothers hugged, then Tim asked, Have you been to see Mum? The hospital's just around the corner, at the foot of the mountain. You'll pass her on the way to Joy. I'm sure she'd like to see you before the world ends, and don't worry, Joy will still be waiting. Kai continued to the foot of the mountain at the edge of the city. There he found the hospital, and there he found his mother. When his mother saw Kai, she smiled, and when she smiled, Kai smiled. They exchanged pleasantries. How you feeling, how you doing, how you holding up, that sort of thing. But she knew why Kai had come, and so she said, The sun will set in the east today. Are you afraid, Kai? Kai hesitated, but shook his head. His mother looked at him with worldly tiredness and a hint of sadness. My dear boy, she said. Why not? Kai frowned. What? But he knew what she'd asked. Why indeed was he not afraid? He thought about this and surveyed all he would lose if there was no tomorrow. The grey office he'd worked at for 8 years, the dingy apartment he came home to every day, a relationship which he was now forced to admit had lost its spark many years ago. His mother seemed to catch all this in his eyes. She continued, her voice fragile, splintered, yet carrying all the warmth of a mother's love. Kai, in this hospital, I've lived every day as my last for years, not knowing whether tomorrow would come. I think only then can I reserve the right not to be afraid of the end of the world. And even then, some days my son might visit, and I realize my time isn't up yet. When was the last time you visited your father? She asked. I think I will today, Kai said. I think your father would like that. Kai kissed her and went on his journey. As twilight descended, this side of the mountain had become shrouded in shadow, its thick blanket of trees smothering the light. There was a familiar, if downtrodden path which led to its peak. Kai envisioned the crest, the beauty of the outlook, and joy as he walked up the steep and winding curves of the mountain, his feet growing ever heavier. When he was halfway up the mountain, he decided to visit his father. To do so, he had to leave the mountain trail, though he knew exactly where to go. "Hey Dad," he said, kneeling down. "It's been a while. Hope you're doing well. You know, I'm not so much with the words, I thought I'd just give you an update. Things are good, except they're not really. Mum's not getting any better, not any worse at least, not that it really can get much worse. Joy and I are still together. I think you would have liked her, Dad. We're just about holding up. Oh, and I saw Tim today. He's doing fine, as always. Dad, the world is ending tomorrow. What's it like on the other side?" But the only reply he received was of ash and wind between the leaves. He sighed and bid his father farewell for the last time. As he continued his ascent of the mountain, Kai thought of each of the people he had met on that day. He thought of Howard and his boss, sitting at their desks in their office chairs, toiling away in the twilight of the world. He thought of the man and the dog, oblivious as one another, playing a game of fetch with their fates. He thought of Sam, serving coffee to suits and satchels with a smile every bit as transient as her customers. He thought of his brother, Tim, sitting in his backyard watching his son and his wife play in the shelter of a willow that wept for the impending passing of the world's torch, wept for the souls who wished for nothing more than a peaceful final sleep. His mother's words came to mind then, and Kai realized, as his pace quickened and his heart hastened, that he was afraid. Deathly afraid of tomorrow. Afraid of losing those things he had once taken for granted. A brother's hug, a mother's touch, a love that once burnt like wildfire. All that was left now were the ashes. Yet from ashes came the first saplings of the new dawn, a chance to make the most of the life he had left. And so, Kai yearned for tomorrow on the day that there would be none. The peak had been just as Kai remembered. A sadness came over him as he saw Joy. She was sitting on the bench, facing the sunset. His pace slowed finally to a walk. The sun's rays had not yet been swallowed by the eastern horizon, which glowed its brightest orange. Behind them, the city had already fallen into the embrace of night, but here at the peak of the mountain, the last day had not yet ended. Kai sat beside Joy, feeling as if all the distance that he had covered over the day was captured in those few inches between them. She didn't move. They sat in silence for a while, until Kai extracted the note she had left him that morning. "Of all places, why did you come here if you wanted to escape? The same place as always." "Do you know why my mother called me Joy?" she asked. "Remind me." "Because she wanted me to pursue my namesake. I was to be the happiest child to grow into the happiest person, a never-ending climb for that peak, one I could never reach." Kai thought about that. He thought about the last time he had seen her smile, a long time ago it had been, but the memory still came to him. They had been on this very mountain, on this very bench. "Do you understand now, Kai, why this place is my escape?" she said. "I do." It was her last chance, as it was his. "Are you afraid of tomorrow too?" she asked. "I am," he replied. "Kai, if the world ends tomorrow, what would you have gone back and done differently?" Kai looked at Joy. "I would have done everything I did today for the last 8 years." So, on the eve of the last day, in the final light of the world, Kai took Joy's hand and ran. They ran through the night, ran back to their apartment, ran until their lungs were fit to burst, and Kai took his car keys. "We're going for a drive," he said, and so they drove. "Stay awake," Kai said as he drove them from the city into the country far from their lives. The sun had disappeared, the stars watched over them now, shining with the pearlescence of a million other worlds. The words of the voice from the dream that had written their fates, echoed through Kai's mind. "When you sleep on that night, you shall dream no longer. You shall dream no longer." Though their eyelids grew heavy and their limbs thick with the weight of sleep, they fought against the end in what little way they could. They talked about everything and nothing. They learnt things about each other that had gone unspoken in 8 years together, things that they had never thought to ask before, answers they had never sought to give before, drunk on wisps of hope that danced like fireflies in the night air, intoxicated by their dreams of new lives, of fresh beginnings, of happinesses both new and old. But as they fought against the end, as they strained to keep their eyes open, they began to lose the fight. Kai closed his eyes just to rest him for a second, but In the next moment, they were open again. He stood alone. Joy had disappeared from his side, and above, a sun, blazing bright in the night sky, illuminated his face. Then, from above, the voice that had visited all humans once visited Kai once more. "Hello," it said. Kai was silent at first. "Am I dead?" "You humans are an odd lot, always jumping to conclusions. Look around you." Kai did. It looked a lot like what he imagined death to be. Nothing, forever. "I don't feel like I'm dead," Kai said. "That's because you aren't," the voice replied. "So where am I then?" "Inside your own head. You're dreaming." Kai remembered the message once more. "Is this my last dream then?" "It doesn't look like much," he said, a tinge of disappointment in his words. There was a pause then, the kind of pause that silenced worlds. "It will, in just a moment." And so the voice took Kai's hand and led him on a journey, tracing back every step he had taken on that ultimate day and beyond. He watched his own life refold itself. He felt pain, for he had to watch his fights with Joy, his distance from Tim, his mother's sickness and his father's passing. But as he walked further and further back, that pain gave way to moments of gold. He saw his father breathe and laugh once more, and his mother walk in all her grace and elegance and strength. He saw late nights spent talking with Joy, exploring each other's minds and fluttering hearts. He saw himself playing with Tim, two young lads with not a care in the world. And as he watched these things, he found his pain was no longer of the struggles he had once experienced, but of the beauty that would be lost when the world ended. Suddenly, he was pulled back to the void. Kai took several moments to catch his breath. "What was that?" he asked. "The entire history of you," the voice replied. "Makes you think, doesn't it?" Kai was still reeling, but regathered himself. "Are you God?" he asked. No. I'm simply the culmination of all of humanity's collective doubt. A theory, if you will, or perhaps a legend, a tale, a fable." Kai didn't understand. "But you're here now," he said. "I can hear you, clear as day. You're no myth, nor a legend." "But isn't that it, Kai? The truth of a tale lies in how much you believe in it." "What about Joy? Where's she gone?" "She's still standing in a field, leaning against your car. You are too." Kai nodded, then shook his head. "So what does it all mean then, really? All those years, all those people, waiting for the sun to rise in the west, for the end of the world?" "What do you mean? Perhaps you were expecting a great explanation, because this is the meaning of life or something like that." "No, there's none of that. The world was never going to end. That's not really how these things go. There's no be-all, end-all. That might be comforting to some, distressing to others. In any case, go home, Kai. Get some sleep. You won't die, and neither will your dreams. Cherish that which you have, and the opportunity to have more of it on the morrow." And in the early morning of the next day, the sun rose in the east again. All they had been taught, great catastrophe, the end of all existence, it did not transpire. The human race had fallen victim to a legend, a lie. And when Howard and Kai's boss woke up the next morning and saw the sun shining upon them, they shrugged and put on their suits and made their way to the office. And when the man and his dog woke up, they went on a walk and played fetch as always. And when Tim woke up, he sat under the willow and played with his son, barefoot between the leaves and grass. They dreamt no longer, but they had no dreams to lose in the first place. And so life went on, and the voice that had visited the human race for eons was never heard again. But for Kai and Joy, who did not sleep on that night, their dreams did not die. In the days, months and years that followed, Kai occasionally found himself wondering what had spurred the voice to come in the first place, looking for a bigger answer, the twist, the reveal. There was none. "Go home and live your life," the voice had said. "Live it to its fullest." Perhaps all the human race had needed was a small reminder of that fact. So Kai slept that day and all the days after, and every night he dreamt of a new life, one that would not be quite so grey.